Part 7. Reborn as an interstellar giant mosquito. Author, Bulletin U. Chapter 61. As an outstanding employee in the second workshop of the factory, Dang Sheng was once commended for his work. But his condition has been very bad these 2 days. I often make mistakes at work, and I was half an hour late this morning. People from the class above helped him for half an hour, which made everyone complain. But the greenhouse is still in a state of neglect. Of course, as a worker, he agreed to the factory director and received an acting fee of 20,000 yuan to pretend to have a conversation with Xiao Li. Now he felt very uncomfortable. Although the factory director assured that Xiao Li was fine, he just fell into a coma. But in fact, Xiao Li is not really dead, right? If he knew better and found out that I did this, would he blame me? You really shouldn't have taken those 20,000 yuan. Listen, what's happening outside? Suddenly a worker yelled, and the greenhouse was also startled and came back to consciousness from the dazed state. There were sounds like firecrackers exploding outside, and there were some screams. What's wrong? The police are here, right? Let me just say, this is not a good place. We will all be arrested later. What is this? I was speechless and yelled at an assistant working in a greenhouse. Although we were all deceived without knowing the situation, if drugs were being made here, each of us would be sentenced to a few years in prison. Every worker in the workshop is very nervous. In fact, no one is stupid. This factory is so mysterious and does not seem to be the style of a regular unit. These people have already had a vague idea of these situations. That means the factory may not be doing anything respectable. But for the sake of profit, these workers kept silent and continued working like this until the giant bug-biting incident happened. Some people can't stand this kind of psychological pressure and categorically propose to resign. The Siberian wild tigers will naturally not let these workers go until their goals are achieved. So I found the greenhouse in the middle of the night, and after coercing and luring him, the phone incident happened the next day. Now there seemed to be gunshots outside again, and Da Sheng felt that he couldn't sit still. Everyone, listen to me, he shouted loudly, as if all the trance he had been in for the past few days was shouted out of his body. Everyone turned around and looked at the man who was Xiao Li's best friend in the factory. At first, everyone doubted whether Xiao Li was really dead, but after the greenhouse was confirmed by phone, of course they became dubious. Actually, the person who called us 2 days ago was not Xiao Li at all. It was the factory director who asked me to say that. I'm sorry, everyone, Dang Gang said with tears falling down. Click click click. Just as these workers were making a noise, a huge dark black mosquito the size of a fist was crawling through the pipe and quietly into the workshop here. Jia Yan was in the pipe and heard the noise outside. There was also a fight in the workshop. It's better this way, so I can do something in the chaos. Jia Yan crawled out faster. At the end of the pipe here, there is still an observation port. Jia Yan came here, quietly raised his head and looked outside. The workshop here is obviously much larger than the other side, and the workers are all wearing protective clothing, which really looks a bit high-tech. However, the workers' vulgar words and unprofessional actions made them look more like a small workshop in the countryside than a tiger. There were more than a dozen people in the workshop, and there seemed to be some people downstairs. Jia Yan saw that a full martial arts was going on in the workshop here. Is it okay for a group of people to surround and fight a person who doesn't backhand? Can people bully people like this in factories? Jia Yan was almost stunned. Naturally, he didn't know the inside story, but he just felt that the situation was more convenient for him. The smell in the air is really good. This place is filled with the smell of purple-red medicinal liquid. I must have found the right place. However, just breathing the air here, I can feel something in my body being, is it aroused because of the huge amount of purple-red liquid? Or is it because there are other secrets here? Jia Yanfu's eyes lit up. He had always felt that the Siberian wild tiger must have some secrets hidden. Otherwise, how could someone like him, who seemed to know that it was impossible to be proficient in medicine, casually come up with the so-called antimicrobial peptides? Because Jia Yan doesn't know what benefits this so-called antimicrobial peptide, which is a purple-red liquid, has to humans, but for certain organisms, it is simply an excellent drug for genetic mutation. It is impossible for Northeast wild tigers to develop something of this level with the equipment and facilities they see now. In other words, Jia Yan doubts that there is any institution in the entire Earth that can develop such a liquid. Otherwise, living things can mutate and increase. If the cost is reduced, using them in large quantities, even if they are used as food, will change the whole world. Of course, eating giant centipedes is hard for many people to accept, but the whole world has changed, and you have to eat it even if you don't want to. However, the Siberian wild tigers did not release a large amount of it, let alone the existence of this liquid. Then there is only one possibility, and that is that the production of this drug has certain limitations. Jia Yan looked at the workers outside who were fighting together. Within a moment, the man who didn't fight back began to fight back too. His protective suit was torn in 2 strokes, and it was indeed of inferior quality. A group of people fight more fiercely. De Shen, you bastard! That's Xiao Li. Do you know that your best friend comes from a village? How dare you do this? It doesn't matter that you lied to us. Even if your best friend is dead, you still dare to do this. It's so heartbreaking. Do you understand? You are a beast. You are a beast, aren't you? You bastard, you just want to kill us, otherwise I would have left a few days ago. Now the police are here, what should I do? What do you think I should do? The workers fought back and forth while trying to reason with others. This kind of fighting style was also refreshing to Jia Yan. But watching the fun is not my first mission. My first mission is to find the purple-red liquid. Jia Yan looked around, feeling where the scent that attracted him was strongest. The smell organ of the mosquito is the 2 slender tentacles on the top of the head. At this time, Jia Yan's tentacles moved, and then finally locked in a certain direction. That side attracts me the most. Jia Yan's eyes lit up, and he seemed to notice in his senses that the huge boiler in the center that seemed to be deeply rooted and seemed to extend to the ground on the first floor contained the smell that attracted him the most. He spread his wings and flew directly there. Mosquito, mosquito. When the besieged greenhouse saw Jia Yan flying in the air, he raised his hand with difficulty and pointed at the giant mosquito. What the hum are you doing about mosquitoes? Some workers actually saw Jia Yan, but to them, mutated creatures were already familiar with them. They usually found things to beat, but now they were filled with anger. It must be, beat up the greenhouse first. You guys, don't blame me for fighting back. I even said I was sorry. You are still fighting. The greenhouse was also a young man, and he originally wanted to atone for his sins, but after being beaten a few more times, the unique impulse of young people came out. Just a moment ago, he was just pushing and shoving, but now he aimed at a worker and punched him in the face. Suddenly, the factory became more lively. Jia Yan didn't hide his figure. He felt that there was something extremely attractive to him in the central boiler. Even if some of these workers would pull their hands away and come to chase him, he could still rely on his flexible speed to get back into the channel. Jia Yan didn't know how long the chaos in the 2 workshops would last, but what happened here was that after the Siberian wild tigers and others solved the trouble caused by the college boy outside, they would definitely come to the workshop to resolve the chaos. At that time, we cannot expect the workers to start fighting with the Siberian wild tigers. After all, the Siberian wild tigers and others have guns in their hands. Even if the workers want to resist, they don't have the capital. Therefore, the current chaos cannot last long. Purple-red liquid? Could it be that when the quantity reaches a large amount, it can attract me so much? Or is it something else? He stared at the huge metal boiler in the center of the workshop. There are also very clear Japanese characters on the surface of this boiler. CQ-0002, plus a string of Japanese characters that Jia Yan couldn't understand. It is this internal thing that attracts oneself. Jia Yan is not just a real insect loyal to his instincts, he has a human soul, and while he is flying, his mind is thinking. No. If the purple-red liquid attracts me, then the feeling of attraction is more than 10 times stronger. I don't think that increasing the amount of purple-red liquid will increase the attraction 10 times. What's going on here? What is it? Jia Yan became even more curious. Within a few seconds, he flew to the front of the central boiler. He found there was no way to get in. Also, if a mosquito can fly into a boiler casually, it would be strange if the boiler doesn't explode. If you can't get into the boiler, go to Shiyuan. It doesn't mean you can't get anything. Jia Yan discovered that there was a metal thing shaped like a faucet just outside the boiler. At this time, this thing was slowly dripping some unknown dark black liquid downwards. The liquid it dripped dropped into a metal pool below that was about 30 centimeters long and wide, forming a deep black pool of water only 5 or 6 centimeters deep, as dark as ink. Bang! Bang bang! Bang bang bang! When Jia Yan saw the dark black liquid dripping drop by drop, I just felt my tube-shaped heart beating suddenly and violently. The inner voice is eager, extremely desperate. The purple-red liquid may not be able to mutate for the third time, but this black liquid can definitely do it. What exactly is it? This problem arises at the same time. Jia Yan found that he had instinctively rushed toward a pool of black liquid at the fastest speed he could fly. To be continued. Please collect. Thanks to Book Friend. I like books written by Tomato for the 588 tip. Thanks to book friends such as Menying Luoluo, I laughed and cried after reading it. Shunfen Yang, Slight Taste, Xianyuan Ranzuo and other book friends for their rewards. Thank you very much. Reborn as an interstellar giant mosquito. Author, Bulletin U. Chapter 62. The taste is so tempting. Jia Yan can't wait. The overall feeling of the boiler is like a big belly, and the lower part seems to be heated gas. The high temperature makes the nearby air extremely hot. Jia Yan was flying in the air. The closer he got to the black liquid, the stronger the strong feeling in his heart became. This is no ordinary thing. But he had no time to think about more detailed thoughts. At this time, his thoughts were almost completely occupied by the desire to swallow the black liquid. With a normal sound, Jia Yan plunged into the pool of black liquid. This liquid feels like oil and is sticky. Jumping here, Jia Yan's entire body was covered in pure black color. But the wonderful thing is that as soon as this liquid touches the body, it immediately penetrates into the skin from the surface. Sizzle. It was very similar to the sound of stir-frying vegetables. After Jia Yan's body made a sound, a burst of smoke that seemed to be burning came out. Ah! Jia Yan instantly screamed in his mind. What a feeling it is, it's like throwing your whole person into the fire and roasting it. No. Perhaps even scarier than that, because his whole body was soaked in black liquid. There was no place on Jia Yan's body that was not soaked by the black liquid, so this painful barbecue feeling was also pervasive. There is no place in my whole body that does not hurt? No, this is just physical contact. I believe in my intuition. This black liquid must be good for the body. Jia Yan, you will definitely succeed. You will definitely get through it. Ah! You will definitely complete your third evolution. Jia Yan, you can't admit defeat. The huge black Anopheles sinensis mosquito keeps flapping in the black liquid. The violent sound also attracted several workers who were still fighting over there. Look, that mosquito really went into the original solution. Someone said so. There happened to be two people who were tired of arguing with the greenhouse, So they walked out of the crusade and chatted in silence. Just go. 9 out of 10 bugs that come in will go there. Don't say we will fight them. Even if we don't fight, there has never been a single one that can come out of the liquid alive. This mosquito is dead. Yes, not many of these bugs die here. What everyone sees are the ones that have successfully grown in size. But if bugs want to eat our finished medicinal solution, they will also have a high mortality rate, and those bugs with poor physical fitness will also die. If you order it with a little one, it will definitely die. These workers are all familiar with it. There seem to be only a few types of bugs that can grow in size, and they have never seen a pure flying bug mutate successfully. The mosquito in front of them is the first time they have seen a flying bug mutate successfully. Jia Yan, who was struggling in the black liquid, ignored the attention of these people. He still has his own will. This is due to the success of the previous 2 mutations and the 2 tortures, which made his mind extremely firm. No, it's just the surface now. There's a more important inside. Jia Yan struggled to stand upright in the black liquid. The entire mosquito's body was emitting a faint green smoke. No one who saw the scene would think that this huge mosquito could survive. But Jia Yan not only survived, but he also had a mind. With his body trembling, Jia Yan gently poked out his mouth parts. With his mouth part piercing the black liquid, Jia Yan controlled his almost powerless body and slowly sucked the black liquid. These fluids are sucked into the stomach through the mouth needle. Although I was prepared, when these seemingly calm but extremely violent liquids entered the body. Ah! It hurt so much. Jia Yan shivered even more violently, his internal organs seemed to be burning, and there was no place in his body that was not hot. It hurts on the outside, and it hurts on the inside as well, and the black liquid absorbed dozens of times faster than the purple-red liquid he had taken before, and it almost melted in the mouth. As soon as the black liquid entered the body, it spread to all organs and all organs. The cells spread and will completely destroy Jia Yan's body in an instant. It doesn't hurt. Ah! It doesn't hurt. It doesn't hurt at all. Jia Yan's body was rolling in the black liquid. Jia Yan. It doesn't hurt at all. It doesn't hurt at all. It's much more comfortable than being beaten to death. I will definitely get through it. How come you're not dead yet? Several workers chatting over there seemed a little surprised. When ordinary mutant bugs come here, they can survive in the black liquid for at most 10 seconds, and then they will die with smoke all over their bodies. When you pick it up, it looks like an alien. The shape seems to be burnt. It's very scary. But what happened to this mosquito? It's been half a minute and I'm still struggling. Jia Yan is really not dead, he is insisting not to let his will weaken, because he vaguely feels that if his will gives up, then he will die. With such a strong will, it no longer makes sense to describe Jia Yan as a reborn soul of a human being, because not every human being has such a strong will. Perhaps the bigger reason is that his character is so strong at heart. Or maybe it was because he had died once before that he was extremely determined. In short, after 2 minutes of flopping in the black liquid, this black mosquito was still struggling fiercely. He didn't want to struggle, it would be too eye-catching. But this level of severe pain was unbearable. To use a popular analogy, if a human is bitten by a mosquito, can you resist grabbing it? And Jia Yan's feeling at this time was 100 times stronger than that situation, no, 1,000 times. Being immortal is not bad, but being able to endure without struggling is already considered a god, not a creature. Huh. Several workers over there were shocked. This was the first time they had seen this situation. How could any creature be able to persist for such a long time? I'll go over there, fish it out and beat it to death. One person was silent for a moment. Although his mind was no longer on the factory, he still felt guilty for not taking out the mosquito and killing it. So he took steps and walked towards the original liquid pool in the center of the workshop. Bang! Just when this person took 2 steps, a huge sound sounded. The worker quickly turned back to where the loud noise was coming from. In the greenhouse surrounded by crowds, at some point, a metal rod was picked up from the ground, and the metal rod hit a mechanical control panel. There were bloodstains on the head of the greenhouse. I don't know who caused it. At this moment he looked like crazy. I'll fight with you. His eyes were red and he raised the metal rod. Someone stepped forward to snatch the metal rod. But there was a bang. This man's head was bleeding, and he was hit on the head by a stick from the greenhouse. His head was bleeding immediately, and he ran away in embarrassment. Big Shed, how dare you? Someone in the crowd shouted. What am I afraid of? You hit me and you don't let me fight back. Dagong held up the metal rod and waved it wildly at the man. The man jumped away quickly, shouting, crazy. For a moment, the greenhouse was chasing and fighting everyone in the workshop. Not to mention, if a person is crazy, others will be afraid of him. And the worker who was about to fish out Jia Yan stopped immediately. The shed chased the man, waving his stick. You kid, Dapen, I didn't hit you just now. This man, who had been watching from the side, was now being chased by Dapen. He was startled and quickly ran away towards the boiler in the direction he had gone before. I know you just looked down on me, Xiao Li is not the same. What kind of best friend? You despise my family for having no money, and my wife is not beautiful. You all deserve to die, the shed roared and chased the worker. The two chased each other through the original liquid pool. At this time, the movement in the original liquid pool had become smaller. It's just that the entire surface of the pool water is emitting thick smoke, just like rolling boiling water, and there are some bubbles churning on the surface of the black liquid pool water. It feels like there is a peerless monster under the water, as if it is about to be born. Big Shed, you're crazy. You're crazy. The escaping workers happened to come near the boiler. There was no way behind him, so he had to lean against the surface of the boiler. The hot temperature made his whole back tremble. But there is no way, the greenhouse with red eyes in front has arrived. The heavy metal rod held by the man in his hands seemed to be weightless when the crazy man picked it up. It was simply extremely powerful. We have something to talk about, Dang Sheng. I didn't hit you just now. I don't care about what happened between you and Xiao Li. Don't push me too hard, the worker said, leaning against the wall of the boiler. I didn't force you. It was you who forced me. The greenhouse roared, and then the metal rod in his hand hit the worker hard. The metal rod was hung by the fierce wind, with such power and momentum, it seemed that it would not be willing to kill people unless it was smashed to death. In an emergency, fortunately, this worker is also very flexible. He suddenly tilted his head. Clang! The heavy metal rod struck the metal surface of the boiler. There was a heavy echoing sound. This metal boiler is an ancient thing from decades ago. It has been working normally for nearly 100 years and it was already a feat of Japanese technology. Now it is in operation again, and the pressure and temperature inside are extremely high. The most fatal point is the outer surface of this boiler. There are some gunshot wounds. A heavy metal rod hit the outside of the boiler, immediately connecting these scars. The old diseases that have accumulated for decades, coupled with the subtle cracks that already existed, caused a crack to appear on the surface of the boiler in an instant. Click. Immediately afterwards, the crack expanded rapidly. Click, click, click. The entire surface of the boiler was covered with clearly visible cracks almost in the blink of an eye. Not good. The shed looked at the scene in front of him and was so horrified that his liver and gallbladder split apart. A group of workers, desperate for their lives, rushed towards the stairs outside the workshop. And the cracked boiler suddenly spewed out a stream of high-pressure gas from one of the cracks. Poof! Immediately afterwards, more and more high-pressure gas was sprayed out. Puff 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 puff. To be continued. Yesterday, I saw a book friend voted for 3 9,000 word updates. At that time, I thought I could give it a try. I can do it. Now I find, 555, I really can't do it. I hope everyone can vote for an update of 6,000 words. Thanks for books such as The God-Killing Demon-Killing Invincible Supreme, Have You Registered, Smiling Face Like a Cake, Safkaf, I Laughed and Cried After Reading It, Helpless Dreamer, Menying Lululo, Murky, and other books friends reward. Thanks. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Reborn as an interstellar giant mosquito. Author, Bulletin U. Chapter 63. When these tiny spurts of high-pressure gas reach a limit. Boom. Red light suddenly flashed. A large amount of high-pressure gas will spurt out from inside the boiler in an instant, with the force of thousands of troops. And this Japanese boiler, which had existed for decades, exploded from the inside. Unimaginably huge explosion. It came from the workshop on the second floor. The Siberian wild tiger is leading his men to torture and beat the college boys they just captured. In fact, the Siberian wild tiger had already gotten the information about the 4 people in this group from the 2 university teachers they caught in the afternoon. Now it's just one more verification. In short, he knew that things were a bit troublesome. One is a top tutor in the life sciences industry and the other is a well-known teacher in the media major. If they disappear from my place, it will definitely affect public opinion. The Siberian wild tiger stood in this cage-like room, looking at the young student below who was beaten to a bruised nose and face, with a thoughtful expression on his face. Tell me, where is the other girl? The Siberian wild tiger grabbed Jiang Shiming's hair and asked fiercely. Jiang Shiming looked at him and then smiled. She has gone back to town a long time ago. I asked him to contact the police force in Shanghai as soon as possible. You don't dare to touch her with your network here. Asshole. The northeastern wild tiger was furious. He had indeed made arrangements. As long as he saw a member of the group, no matter who he was, he would first use his connections to suppress the matter. He would wait until he captured those people before taking the next step. Decision. I didn't expect that the other party's arrangements were so good. If he contacted the Shanghai side first, the Siberian wild tiger would have no connections. He could only watch the matter get bigger, and even his backstage wouldn't be able to protect him. Once all the calculations and efforts were lost, the Siberian wild tiger angrily waved the long stick in his hand and was about to knock the college student on the head. But right now. Boom. There was a violent explosion so close that the entire dark room shook violently. The Siberian wild tiger couldn't stand firmly and hit the corner. Bright red blood stains gurgled from his forehead. Even the 2 men standing behind him fell to the ground and lost the ability to move for a while. On the contrary, Jiang Shiming, a college student, was not injured at all because his hands and feet were firmly tied and sitting on the chair. A look of joy immediately appeared in his eyes. Because the arm is almost free. Taking advantage of the moment when these people could not stand up, he took out his hands and untied the rope under his feet. Or how can I say that the northeastern wild tigers are not very professional? His men, including himself, were born as gangsters, and they were not very professional in this kind of tying up people. Ah! Stop! One of his men saw Jiang Shiming standing up and was about to pounce on him. But the next moment, this subordinate quickly raised his hands in surprise. Because Jiang Shiming pulled out the pistol hidden in the waistband of the Siberian wild tiger. Then, the college boy who had been a hero for a day seemed to really transform into an immortal hero and ran out of the prisoner holding him. A moment later, the Siberian wild tiger with a broken forehead also rushed out of the room with 2 of his men. The rooms where the 2 university teachers were detained were already empty. Don't worry about them, let's go see what happened and how it exploded, The Siberian wild tiger's eyes were full of anger. But he didn't mix things up. After the 4 people escaped, even if the matter was exposed, he still had room for change. He could even contact those big shots faster, and then speed up the process of his transformation and cleansing himself. But if something happens to the factory, everything will be over. In the number 2 workshop of the factory, the energy generated by the boiler explosion was so huge that it completely destroyed all the equipment in the house. A large hole was even blown out of the ceiling of the house where the boiler was located. The power of the explosion can be imagined. Everywhere is devastated and messy. Some of those pipes were bent by the explosion, and some of the precision equipment completely produced sparks, crackling, and arcing. As for the place where the boiler was originally located, there was only a half-broken iron can there. The boiler was entirely made of steel. At this time, it looked like an exploding firecracker, exploding in all directions. The broken metal it shot out was like a bullet, hitting the equipment and metal instruments into pieces. The metal pool where Jia Yan was located also did not survive the disaster. The entire metal pool was bombarded by the shock wave caused by the explosion to the corner, and was then blocked by the wall. The metal was twisted and the walls were even cracked. A pool of black liquid completely shook out of the pool and spilled all over the floor. As for the inside of the pool, the damage was not serious because the metal on the edge blocked the main damage. However, the violent explosion shock wave still bombarded the huge mosquito inside to the edge of the metal pool, and had a close contact with the workshop wall. Now the already unbearable pain became even more unbearable. The mutation process that seemed to be gradually improving suddenly changed. Jia Yan could clearly feel that the organs and cells in his body that had been transformed became more active under the stimulation of this huge force, and then deepened the degree of change. The pain was still so painful, and even now he felt a strange juice overflowing from all surfaces of the body, and then condensing again on the outer layer of the body's exoskeleton. No. There is such a strong explosion here. Someone will come over to check it out soon. I have to leave. But the body is already like this, how can it move? He couldn't even feel his body anymore. Among all the sensory states, there was only one word: pain. There was no feeling at all except pain. Jia Yan has reason to believe that no ordinary creature other than himself can accomplish this kind of mutation. Such a degree of severe pain, and it seems that if you lose your fighting spirit, you will die. It is impossible for ordinary creatures except humans to survive it. But even if it hurts, keep moving. Your life is your own. If you don't work hard yourself, it's impossible for others to work hard for you. If you don't cherish it yourself and don't strive for it, then your life is only worth that much. As a mosquito, my starting point is 1,000 or 10,000 times lower than when I was a human. So I have to work harder, otherwise, how can I succeed? Jia Yan shouted in his heart. Move your front feet. Move your middle foot. Move your hind legs. The compound eyes are incredibly tough, and the clots on the surface of the mosquito's body are getting thicker and thicker, making it absolutely impossible to move. But Jia Yan's forefoot, which was covered with thick clots, slowly, tremblingly, took a step forward. Immediately afterwards, his middle and hind feet, also trembling, slowly but firmly broke free from the shackles of the clot. Jia Yan used incredible perseverance to make his body that was basically impossible to move. As for flying with wings, that was absolutely impossible. He could only use his 6 slender legs to walk while trembling, looking for a glimmer of hope at the slowest speed. 1 step, 2 steps, 3 steps. Bang! This is the sound of Jia Yan falling from the metal pool. The focus in his compound eyes was disappearing, and the world in front of him was faintly blurred. Those infrared sensing abilities and the ability of the antennae to see carbon dioxide seemed to be faintly blocked by the slowly thickening and condensing clots on the body surface, and are quickly disappearing. No. If you don't hurry up, you will lose your ability to move completely. He raised his eyes and looked around. However, the surrounding workshop walls, although affected by the explosion, adhered to the style of military architecture with good workmanship, and there was not even a hole for him to escape. Tap tap tap. There were many complicated footsteps on the stairs downstairs. And the wild roar of the Siberian wild tiger. I will imprison them all. The person responsible for this matter, I will use him to scare the monkeys. His voice was full of chilling momentum. Also, just judging from the appearance, the Siberian wild tiger who had just arrived from the detention room of the office building knew that half of his hard work for so many years had been destroyed by these workers. It is not impossible to recover, but it requires huge resources and manpower. Without luck and the ability to strategize, he will never succeed again, unless he succeeds in getting into the lap of a big shot. Of course, what he was most worried about was actually more than that. The passage was blown open. I hope those secrets Grandpa Zio told are not true. While the Siberian wild tiger climbed up the stairs, he ordered his men to turn on the pistol safety one by one. And at the moment when these people slowly walked into the workshop, Jia Yan struggled to control his body. He finally decided where he wanted to go. The 6 long legs were trembling, and sometimes they fell over after taking 3 steps, and even took a step backward. The sight and various organ sensations were disappearing at a faster speed, but Jia Yan still maintained the last glimmer of clarity. If you don't fight, you will definitely die. Although you may not survive if you fight hard, there is always a little bit of hope. The target he was walking towards was the huge metal boiler. The footsteps rushing upstairs seemed to slow down. Jia Yan felt slightly relieved. This at least bought him some time. The boiler was not far away, and the metal there was blown up like blooming flowers by the force of the explosion. A metal bar stuck out and extended directly to the front of Jia Yan's body. Jia Yan trembled and climbed onto the metal bar. He saw in the pool that there was a metal pipe leading down from the lower part of the exploded metal boiler. This pipe may be connected to the first floor, or it may lead to an unknown place. No matter what, this is Jia Yan's only way to survive. Because there is no other place in this workshop where he can escape. Tap tap tap. When slow footsteps came from not far outside the workshop, Jia Yan finally reached the top of this metal bar. Below him is pure darkness. This pipeline is like an endless passage with no end in sight. It's like a gateway to hell. Jia Yan didn't think much about it. When he heard the sound of footsteps, he came to the door of the workshop. Move your slightly trembling legs and jump down. Jump right in. To be continued. Please collect it. There are more than 100 book friends who have collected this book on Chuangshi, as well as book friends who read this book on other websites. If you have a Kidian account, please log into your Kidian account and collect this book. Thank you for your support. Thanks to Ayod for book friend for the 588 tip, thanks to book friends such as YWYY, Have You Registered and Murky for their tips, thanks, Reborn as an Interstellar Giant Mosquito author, Buletin U. Chapter 64. The Siberian wild tiger raised his pistol and aimed his gun at the severely damaged number 2 workshop. The big explosion scene that caught his eye made him grit his teeth. This explosion is all my hard work over the past few years. But what he sees more is vigilance. From the corner of his eye, he could faintly see the center point of the explosion, and something fell into the pipe below the boiler. But when I looked carefully, there was no trace at all. It must be my hallucination, right? The Siberian wild tiger felt a little nervous in his heart. Notify the operator on the first floor to close the pipeline valve. It must be completely closed. Let the mechanic below come up and ask him to try his best to temporarily seal the pipe in the boiler. Otherwise, it will be dangerous. He informed a subordinate next to him. After the subordinate left, The northeastern wild tiger was still very vigilant and came to the pipe at the center of the boiler. In the depths of this pipe, there is a deep darkness, and there is a strange feeling of sucking in people's souls. The Siberian wild tiger swallowed. "Boss, are you worried about the things we saw when we first came here?" The Siberian wild tiger did not speak, but nodded slightly. This subordinate was obviously an old man who had been with the Siberian wild tiger for a long time. At this time, just like the Siberian wild tiger, his eyes were looking at the bottom of the pipe with some solemnity, and the black muzzle of the pistol was pointed directly down. Jia Yan felt like he had entered a bottomless black hole. He fell extremely fast and collided with sharp objects from time to time, making his already painful body even more painful. Fortunately, the clot solidified outside his body was extremely hard, allowing him to withstand countless collisions without suffering any fundamental injuries. The body is still undergoing the mutation of the black liquid, but the original mutation effect may not be the same at this time. Jia Yan could feel that the entire mutation process had undergone some strange changes in the shockwave of the boiler explosion. Originally, he could feel that his body and internal organs were expanding a little like the previous 2 times. If everything went well, his body would grow again with the help of the black liquid. If it doubles in size more than 10 times, it will truly be a supergiant mosquito. But under the influence of the shockwave, this mutation process was reversed. The feeling of swelling stopped, and Jia Yan felt that all his organs were faintly condensing. This is a variation direction chosen by the instinct of life. The previous explosion and the current collision all caused the body to choose another path during this mutation process. That is to give up growth and choose hard defense. Those clots on your body are not temporary. Jia Yan could sense that these clots would stay with him for a long time until he found the possibility of the next mutation. The mechanism of their formation is very similar to the pupal shell formed by dipteran animals, but this has completely transcended the category of pupal shell, and simply becomes a defensive shell. They will condense on the outside of the exoskeleton and solidify. It looks like 100 times tougher than a pupa shell. Complete defense. Even the internal organs, which are no longer enlarged, are mutating towards a more solid appearance. The impact of those explosions and the collision of sharp objects now made the body choose to focus on defense. That's why Jia Yan was able to survive a life-threatening collision. And these fatal collisions promote fine-tuning of the body again and again. The more severe the collision, as long as it is not fatal at once, the more obvious the trend of mutation will be. Jia Yan didn't know where he was anymore. He fell from the pipe, as if there was endless space below. It's definitely not as simple as falling from the 2nd floor to the 1st floor. Keep falling, keep colliding, and keep falling. This process was repeated, and Jia Yan's already dazed spirit became even more dazed now. The world is falling again and again, becoming depressed. It seemed as if the sounds he heard and the touches he felt were moving away from him. He was alone and closed in a space without light or feeling. The darkness is so dark that one's heart trembles. Jia Yan had no choice but to watch these things happen. When the last trace of external senses finally disappears completely, Jia Yan could faintly feel that his body fell on a hard object with a pound sound. Afterwards, all sensory functions completely cease to function. Time seems to have lost its meaning, and space has also lost its meaning. Jia Yan is like a lonely drifter in his own space. The only comforting thing here is that he feels that he is still a human being. Although there is no light, the feeling of his fingers, toes, and 5 senses are all so strong. He knew that all of this was just his dream or fantasy. But even so, it is very happy to be able to feel the feeling of being a human again. Loneliness is still loneliness. Just when Jia Yan finally began to wonder if he was dead. Crack. Cha-cha. Cha-cha. A certain sound from the outside world was finally detected by his hearing organs. In the dark and deep space, a solid rock-like object is located among a pile of rocks. It is unknown whether it is a living thing. He was just like the solid stones around him, without any breath of life at all. It is extremely hard, but it looks a little different from the stone on the side. Cha-cha. And it's not far away from this stone. In the dark space, pairs of huge feet moved slowly in this dark and deep place. Cha-cha. Some gravel was stepped on by this foot and rolled directly to the side. This foot belongs to a weird monster. This monster has a slender body, and its body segments are pieced together to create a jaw-dropping length. There are a total of 21 steps and a corresponding 21 body. Judging from the appearance alone, this is a typical centipede. However, the length of its body makes people unable to believe that it is just a centipede. The huge body and the shiny body make this monster different from a real centipede. It seems to be a creature from another world. This is a supergiant centipede with a fiery red body, as thick as a bucket, and an overall length of more than 2.5 meters. If there are biologists here, they will definitely be stunned, because such a huge centipede cannot exist in the current Earth world, not to mention, this kind of centipede seems to be implicitly poisonous, and it is definitely a nightmare for human beings. Cha-cha-cha. This super huge centipede is crawling slowly on the ground. It seemed to sense something, and then its slender body began to search among a pile of rubble. The ferocious and terrifying lips and feet turned over the stones. When it finally turned over a small but hard and dark stone, the centipede stopped searching. He started to move what seemed to it to be just small stones. Maybe it was because the stone didn't respond, or maybe it was because he didn't feel anything strange about this small stone. So the huge flaming red centipede gave up the search, and started crawling with 21 legs making a cha-cha-cha sound. Not long after, the figure of this huge creature disappeared into this quiet space. And not long after the centipede left. Click. Click, click, click. The little stone that was once moved by the flaming centipede actually started to move. The dark appearance looks like a strange creature about 10 centimeters in size, but this creature only vaguely looks like it. At this time, some tiny cracks appeared on the dark surface of his body. The material on the surface of the body is dry and hard, but it is definitely not as hard as a stone. If it was the flaming red centipede before, try again and bite this weird stone with its mouth parts. Maybe you can try fresh food from the outside world. But who has nothing to chew on? So the fiery red centipede left this place. And not long after he left, the stone actually started to move. There are more and more cracks on the surface of the stone. The clicking sound is crisp and loud. Finally, after the rift reaches a certain limit, a continuous crunching sound was heard, and the dark substance covering the surface of the stone completely peeled off. A huge black mosquito with a strong shape and a body length of 10 centimeters appeared in this dark world that was invisible. The appearance of this mosquito is no longer the same as any other mosquito on Earth. Although you can still roughly tell it's a mosquito, the overall feeling has completely changed. Thick, strong, and huge. This is the first impression this mosquito gives people. That's right, this mosquito was none other than Jia Yan, who had sucked the black liquid from the metal pool in the factory and finally succeeded in mutating for the third time after going through a lot of hardships. Jia Yan's current body is only about 13 centimeters. This third mutation has not increased the size of his body. Of course there is a reason for this. Jia Yan has long felt that the effect of this third mutation is entirely focused on strengthening his own defense. It could have been enlarged more than 10 times, and looking for the book could even make him jump directly to a supergiant version of Mosquito 30 to 50 centimeters, but this effect has now completely turned into a compressed essence, making him what he is now. Strong body. Jia Yan felt his thick and solid body. He didn't know how powerful he was now, because even if he didn't continue to grow bigger, he knew that his power system had fully reached the level it should have been. In other words, he was now, although it is still only 13 centimeters, in terms of strength level, it is still half a meter strong as it should be. This power has exceeded Jia Yan's imagination. He is even vaguely thinking, has his power level in certain parts reached or even exceeded the human level? A mosquito that is only 13 centimeters in size, but has human level power? This is absolutely terrifying. All I can say is that the effect of the black liquid is too powerful. So, where is this place? What was that huge centipede just now? To be continued. The book was officially released on August 10th, which is exactly 1 month today, September 10th, and what's even more coincidental is that this chapter has reached exactly 200,000 words. Let's do some math. How many words do you write in an average day? Compared with most authors who publish 120,000 to 30,000 words in a month, Bayu can pat his chest and say, I really worked hard. Thanks to book friends 150606225803921 for tipping with 588, thanks to book friends 150606225803921 for tipping with 100 points, thanks to Destiny Sans Hung Bamboo, Celestial Snail, Menying Luoluo, Murky and Mojunwu Tao reward from a book friend. Reborn as an interstellar giant mosquito. Author, Bulletin Yu. Chapter 65. The surrounding space was dark and full of eerie feeling. Jia Yan shook his 6 thick long legs. These 6 long legs were full of power. Each one is as thick as a chopstick. Even the details at the end are no longer slender, but have a layer of armor formed by clots to protect those parts that are easily damaged. With a slight movement, the long legs seem to be able to tear the air in half, creating a tiger-like wind. A powerful force that even Jia Yan himself cannot estimate. The originally slender and thin body is now like wearing a layer of armor around the body. The armor is thick and strong. Those clots are stacked repeatedly on the body surface to create such a large armor. It is precisely because Jia Yan has suffered too many serious collisions caused the physiology to mutate, and the instinct chose the direction of defense. The 11-section waist and abdomen are like growing muscles, with pieces of tissue stacked here, making the originally weak abdomen no longer weak and weak. The powerful muscles after the 3rd mutation are contracting in the abdomen. Jia Yan can feel that as long as he exerts a little force, the tail needle at the end of the abdomen can make a sound of piercing the air, stabbing the enemy to death. As for the tail needle, it continues to mutate in the direction of perfection. His length reaches 2 centimeters. If these 2 centimeters are added, the total length of Jia Yan's current body is actually 15 centimeters. On the surface of the tail needle, several wounds originally bitten by bats have completely disappeared. At this time, the whole body shows a streamlined shape. Originally, because it evolved from the reproductive organ holding forceps, the slightly unsightly nodal structure in appearance has turned into a smooth line as one-piece molding. Because of this smoothness and streamlined shape, Jia Yan can definitely penetrate harder objects. In other words, his attack methods will become more deterrent because of the existence of this tail needle. Because he was interrupted by the explosion shockwave during his mutation, Jia Yan's current body mainly focuses on defense. In terms of attack, due to the limitations of its body size, although it has power, the mouth needle and tail needle are not long enough, so they cannot be considered a very deadly weapon. However, the lost attack power has given him incredible defense power due to the refinement and condensation of the mutation process. The cell tissue seems to be condensed twice as much as the muscle tissue. And that thick shell armor. Jia Yan has always been a weak little mosquito, but now these defenses give him an unprecedented sense of security and confidence. Even in this unknown dark space, Jia Yan felt that his worries and fears had been reduced a lot. He is really powerful. After observing his body, Jia Yan raised his head and looked at the passage where he fell. But when I looked up, I could only see pitch black and couldn't see clearly at all. The pipe in the boiler should be connected to a gap in the ground, and then I fell all the way along the gap, and finally arrived here. Jia Yan is analyzing. The most important component of the Northeast Yahoo factory is the metal boiler in the second workshop. So what is the most unique thing about a boiler? There may be some other things added inside, but the most important thing, no matter how you look at it, is this gap leading to the underground. What's the secret here, that allows the Siberian wild tiger to make purple-red liquid, and even the boiler-fired liquid is the night liquid that is stronger than the purple liquid? Jia Yan looked around. This is an empty cave that is not too bright, but some weak algae grow on the top of the cave. They can emit light and bring a little brightness to this space. Jia Yan doesn't know this kind of algae. He even felt that the oxygen content in the air here was far higher than that of the outside world. This purity of oxygen gave him greater strength when he moved. There are too many weird things. Fortunately, the huge fiery red centipede was swaying in front of Jia Yan's eyes before. It gave Jia Yan some resistance, and now he won't think it's a big deal no matter how weird things happen. See if it can fly. Jia Yan looked worriedly at his wings, which had also mutated and become wider. The organs he called comparable to human strength were actually the two wing muscles located on the side of the chest. Of course, Jia Yan was not completely sure that the strength of this part had reached the human level, but at least that was how the wings felt to him. Now that he was about to fly, Jia Yan was a little worried. If the power of his wings had not increased too much, he would not be able to fly now. Although his body is not big now, his muscle tissue and condensed shell have made his weight increase at least 5 times. And with such a heavy body, it is impossible to fly relying on the previous wings. Snapped. Jia Yan fluttered his wings and found that the sound made by his wings was much clearer than before. Bang 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 bang. He controlled his wings and began to exert force suddenly. The flapping frequency is more than 200 times per second. Buzz buzz. The flapping frequency is more than 500 times per second. Yin yin yin. The huge and heavy body finally slowly rose from the ground. A big stone in Jia Yan's heart finally fell. He now feels that there is no serious strain on the muscle tissue of flapping the wings, so he estimates that his maximum wing flapping frequency should be about 700 times, which is higher than before, and because the body tissues have undergone some subtle adaptations due to changes in aerodynamics, his top speed is definitely higher than before. As for how fast the ultimate speed is, we will just wait and see if we have the opportunity to try it. Jia Yan flapped his wings and flew above his head. Sure enough, there was a huge hole with a diameter of about 2 meters above the cave. This is obviously a naturally formed hole, probably formed by the flow of groundwater over a long period of time. It is full of large and small raised stones. These stones are the reason why Jia Yan's body was injured when he fell. So, as long as you fly upward along this passage, you can return to the factory. Jia Yan flew for a distance and then stopped again. This cave is really weird. The main secret recipe of Northeast Wild Tiger Factory is probably obtained from this underground cave. In the past, the Japanese country even built 3 buildings on the ground just for this cave. Besides, Jia Yan also saw that huge centipede just now. It really didn't look like a natural product. This shows that there may be something weird here. If you don't explore now, you might not have another chance in the future. That fiery red centipede was indeed dangerous, but since I can fly, he's not a big threat to me. After Jia Yan hesitated for a moment, he controlled his body to turn around in the passage and returned directly from where he was. He decided to explore the mysterious cave below. At this time, more than 1 kilometer vertical distance from the ground, 3 buildings were alone in the forest. The place that used to be busy is now a little quiet. The roar of the machines in the factory workshop stopped, but on the other hand, the shouts and curses of workers continued to be heard in the 2 workshops. The workers have been imprisoned inside the factory by the Siberian wild tigers. The most important boiler was damaged, and other machines in the number 2 workshop were also damaged to varying degrees. Coupled with a series of mutations and gunshots, the workers in this factory were like frightened birds. One by one, they submitted their resignations and requests to return home. The northeastern wild tigers and others could not suppress them at all, so they had no choice but to bite the bullet and detain all these workers. "Boss, what are you going to do?" Standing in front of his desk was a young man wearing glasses. This down-and-out college student who was recruited from a job fair has no intention of giving up on his boss at this time, which makes the northeastern wild tigers very happy. The next period of time should be the most difficult time since the establishment of the factory. Just in case, I will call back the attic senior, and let him deal with the team sent by some unfriendly people. Fortunately, I just had a phone call with a big shot, and he has already agreed, on the surface. The police and officials will not take any action against me for the time being. As long as I can deal with the teams that come secretly by myself, he will soon arrange an excellent official status for me. The Siberian wild tiger pinched the front of his nose tiredly, as if all the energy that should have been inexhaustible was squandered. "That's good. As for the passage in the boiler, can you explain it to me now? I have already guessed that most of the medicinal liquids and pharmaceutical formulas we produce are substances with little effect. Now thinking about it, the most important thing should come from this boiler that you have kept secret from me before, right?" the man with glasses asked with some confusion. The Siberian wild tiger looked at him deeply before nodding. "Yes, according to my great-grandfather's records, this passage directly connected to the very deep underground. Decades ago, there were a total of 7 or 8 Japanese exploration teams of more than 100 people went down, but in the end, only 2 people came back. My great-grandfather didn't know exactly what happened next. He only knew that after that, the formula in my hand was matched by Japanese medical personnel. Now, and that boiler was installed in the workshop on the 2nd floor that year. Unexpectedly, after decades, it actually exploded. The Siberian wild tigers are a bit sad. I see, I just don't know where that underground place is. It can actually make more than 100 people from the Japanese country never return, and it can also use that passage to create these purple-red potions. It's really incredible." The man with glasses was stunned for a long time before he said in disbelief. The two chatted for a few more words, and the man with glasses said goodbye and left. After he turned around and opened the door, the faint and cold voice of the Siberian wild tiger rang out. "You won't betray me too, will you?" The palm of the bespectacled man's hand grasping the lock of the office door trembled slightly, but soon, he showed a smile. "You have been kind to me, so of course I will not betray you." After saying that, he closed the door and left. "That's best." Inside the closed door, the Siberian wild tiger's expression was unclear under the dim light, but it just felt cold. To be continued. Little Calvin, so the release is late. Also, what's the point of giving rewards? There are quite few people giving rewards today. Thanks to Sovkov, 878 kh, I laughed and cried and forgot, one season/another silence and other book friends who have repeatedly rewarded me, thank you. I would also like to thank the book friends Say Sadov for voting for 5-6,000 word updates. The step is guaranteed, thank you. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Reborn as an interstellar giant mosquito. Author, Bulletin U. Chapter 66. This book will persist, but please log in to your Kittian account to collect this book. Jia Yan doesn't care so much about what happens on the ground now. He is flying in the cave. The buzzing sound seemed very noisy in the small space. There were echoes all around. Where does this cave lead to? Why can the Siberian wild tiger extract the night liquid from the boiler just through that gap? To Jia Yan, all this is still a mystery. The cave he is in is 5 to 6 meters high and 7 to 8 meters wide. Jia Yan tried to keep flying at about 3 meters, which was half the height of the cave, so that he would have the best dodge route no matter where the attack came from all directions. He felt that there was definitely some secret in this cave, or at the very front of the cave. Otherwise, with the poor conditions of the Siberian wild tigers, it would be impossible for them to independently refine the night liquid that would allow them to mutate for the third time. Jia Yan felt that biological individuals like him that had undergone 3 mutations were extremely rare, because every time he came 3 times, it was extremely difficult. Even he felt strange, why could all those things like centipedes mutate successfully? Even if it was just the first mutation, Jia Yan felt that it would be difficult for ordinary creatures to overcome it. If he hadn't trained himself since birth, and had the tenacity of a human soul, he might not have been able to get through it the first time. How could those creatures with low intelligence get over this hurdle? No. I missed one detail, that is, the mutated creatures I have seen are basically arthropods such as centipedes and centipedes. The characteristic of these animals is that they are much stronger than mosquitoes. Is this the reason? Jia Yan vaguely clarified his thoughts. He felt right. Mosquitoes are diptera insects, and diptera creatures are basically relatively weak. So far, he has not seen any successfully mutated mosquito except himself. Jia Yan is a unique one. Thinking about it again, not to mention the diptera, it seems that other flying creatures have not even seen half of the mutations succeed. That's right. Generally speaking, flying creatures have relatively poor physiques. It is normal for them to be unable to mutate successfully. In other words, among flying insects, even if there are many accidents, it is very likely that I will be the only one. Mutated 3 times. Jia Yan is very confident in his own uniqueness. After all, he was able to survive 3 mutations. The human soul played too many roles. But what was that fiery red centipede just now? Is it also a mutated creature? It can actually grow to more than 2 meters long. This cannot be described by common sense. In terms of mutation, if an average centipede wants to grow to more than 2 meters long, it must mutate at least 3 times, otherwise it would be impossible to have a body of this length. Of course, the creatures in this cave may not be explained by mutation. Maybe they are some ancient species that have been living and evolving here until now. Jia Yan is still flying. Some issues become clearer the more you think about them. Including this cave that has never been known to extend to where, Jia Yan also has some guesses. If you want to provide such a huge centipede with survival, the front of this cave will probably no longer look like this. And there will definitely be no shortage of creatures. Otherwise, according to the current appearance, the centipede will not be able to obtain what it needs to survive. Food. Centipedes are carnivorous creatures. Although they occasionally eat fresh grass leaves and algae, their favorite thing is still meat. Jia Yan believed that the centipede he saw before, no matter how huge it was unlikely to break away from the living habits of its own group, so it was probably a carnivore. So such a huge carnivore can only survive if it has a huge food source, otherwise it would be impossible to survive. So Jia Yan can be sure that there is definitely a different scenery in front of the cave. It is even possible that what will unfold before his eyes will be a huge underground biological world. Jia Yanfu's eyes were filled with even more intense interest. An unknown and complex world was really interesting, and it made him, who already loved zoology, full of interest. If we were still human, just publishing that centipede would have been big news that shocked the world. Of course, it's better now. Jia Yan thinks it's good to enjoy a secret alone. Keep flying forward. Just as Jia Yan was flying over a stalactite, under the light of the glowing moss above his head, something reflective of metal flashed slightly in the corner of the cave. What's this? Jia Yan flew over. Huh? The helmet seems to be worn by soldiers. On the ground, a very rusty metal helmet reflected the light in the dim light. Perhaps due to its age, this helmet is half rotten. The rotten appearance of this helmet is estimated to be decades old. Have humans been here before? That's right. Since the Siberian wild tigers factory is connected here, it is normal for someone to come down from it. And the appearance of this helmet, or the army. Jia Yan thought of some bullet marks on the 3 buildings in the factory. In that war-torn era, it was normal for anything to happen. Even if such a huge scientific discovery was made, it was possible for it to be submerged in the long river of history for some purpose. Jia Yan continued to fly forward. Next, human belongings scattered everywhere appeared in Jia Yan's eyes one by one. These are basically soldiers' things, including highly decayed guns and ammunition. Jia Yan even saw a few snow-white skeletons. It was white and looked very scary. It seems that what came here before was not the action of 1 or 2 soldiers, but the organized behavior of a certain army. Jia Yan looked at everything in front of him. He didn't understand why so many soldiers died here. Could it be that are there any dangers that you haven't discovered yet? He is even more vigilant. After flying forward for a while, he estimated that he was already in this cave, flying more than 200 meters. The cave above the head is getting higher and higher, and the surrounding area is getting wider and wider. Jia Yan felt that the bright green luminous algae around him were gradually becoming more prosperous. Finally, after he passed a pile of rubble, the world in front of me suddenly opened up. As expected by Jia Yan, a new world appeared in front of him. It's just that this new world is far broader than he imagined. The space above his head is at least 20 or 30 meters high, and the space around him is so wide that Jia Yan can hardly see the end of it. Not far away from him, streams and rivers formed by the convergence of underground water were flowing slowly. Countless luminous mosses that look like blooming flowers are growing in full bloom at the top of the cave, illuminating the space as if it were daytime. Wow! Just as Jia Yan was looking at the surrounding scenery in horror, a burst of water suddenly rose from the pool below his body. A large fish about 50 centimeters long jumped out of the water and shot towards Jia Yan in mid-air. What? Jia Yan was startled, and quickly flapped his wings and moved away from his original position. The huge fish looked like some kind of grass carp, but it was really too big, more than 50 centimeters in length. The fish opened its mouth and took a bite in mid-air at the place where Jia Yan was before. Fortunately, Jia Yan had already left that position, and the huge grass carp just splashed a cloud of water in the air, making Jia Yan wet all over. Then it fell again. It can actually jump to a height of 2 meters. This fish's jumping ability is so strong. Jia Yan felt strongly that the current height was not enough. Fortunately, the space at the top was also larger. He quickly controlled his body and climbed higher. When he looked back, he realized that the cave he came out of was just a cave in this vast space. There were several similar caves nearby. The real underground world really does exist. Jia Yan thought that when he was a human being, he had watched many science fiction movies about the underground world, as well as related novels and analysis. Those analyses proved that the underground world might really exist, and there would be quite a lot of it. It's just that the scale cannot be as vast as described in novels or science fiction movies. This space now is obviously one of these underground worlds. It's huge. It's estimated to be more than 5 kilometers long and wide. In addition, there are some small caves here and there connected to here. The total area is already very huge. Jia Yan relied on his sight after 3 mutations to try his best to feel the light of the luminous algae in the distance and judge the size of this huge space. And there are many plants among them. These plants do not grow on sunlight, but on water sources and high concentrations of oxygen around them. It seems that over the course of countless years of evolution, a unique ecosystem has been formed here. To be continued. I couldn't adjust my mentality today, so this chapter was released so late at noon. And another blow is that today there is no website recommendation for next week's website. No wonder when I asked the editor about his score this morning, his tone was not quite right. He probably wasn't very optimistic about it, So he didn't recommend it? Alas, the collection of this book is actually not that bad. After 2 recommendations, the collection has increased by more than 3,000, and the total collection has been more than 4,200. Does a newcomer have to have an increase of 11,000 to be qualified like the great master? Authors signed at the same time as me, who have worse grades than me, will be recommended next week. I guess this is because Bulletin U has poor character and has pestered the editor too many times this week. Alas. Well, thank you to brother. I laughed and cried but forgot for your strong support and rewarded me with 1,888 starting coins thanks to the book Friends of Funeral Management Committee, 878 kh, Helpless Dreamer, Menying Luolugo, Speechless Gazing at the Sky, Have You Registered and Brahma Sky Covering the Earth for their rewards. Bayou hereby promises that this book will never be a eunuch. I'd be sorry if I didn't write millions of words, will definitely stick to it. I hope everyone can continue to support Bayou, thank you. Reborn as an Interstellar Giant Mosquito. Author, Bulletin U. Chapter 67. I'm in a bad mood, so this chapter has been updated late. I'm extremely sorry. But I still want to collect it. I want to struggle like Jia Yan, dying but struggling and never die. Please collect it. Jia Yan flew 10 meters high into the air. When he came to this height, he believed that except for some flying creatures, there should be no other creatures that could threaten him. At a height of 10 meters, the scenery below can be seen in more detail. In this vast and huge space, there are dense flora that resemble forests and shrubs. These plants are somewhat similar to trees, but if you look closely, they are completely different. They look a bit like some weeds in the outside world. If I had to say something, it would be that those weeds were magnified hundreds of times and turned into huge trees, growing like Optimus Prime in this space. Some of them even reached a height of more than 20 meters, directly reaching the ceiling of this underground world. Click, click, click. A strange sound came from the trees at Jia Yan's feet. Jia Yan quickly looked away. I saw a huge fiery red centipede crawling out from the bushes formed by weeds. His size and appearance are very similar to the one Jia Yan saw before. If there are no surprises, it should be the one. This centipede is about 2.5 meters long, and its huge body is the same thickness as a bucket. It is as big as a giant. Just when this centipede crawled to the edge of the stream, trying to absorb water. Wow! Suddenly, an animal that seemed to be an insect, but not quite similar, appeared in the water. The overall length of this animal is unclear, but its exposed head and body are already larger than that of a centipede. It has a pair of compound eyes that look like Jia Yan. At this time, the compound eyes are filled with a faint cold light. What is this? Jia Yan was directly frightened at high altitude and quickly raised his height. The monster waved its pair of front feet, which were as thick as a human arm, but longer than a human body. The front legs hooked out and grabbed hard at the fiery red centipede by the stream. Originally, the size difference was so big that this centipede would definitely not be a match, but when the pair of front legs grabbed it, the fiery red centipede actually curled up. The fiery red centipede turned into a round ball shape, just like a huge pumpkin. The pair of front legs waved and grabbed, but they could only leave a faint white mark on the hard exoskeleton on the surface of the fiery red centipede. Clang! The sound of gold and iron echoed in the air. Sparks flickered on the exoskeletons where the two came into contact. After waving its front legs a few times and seeing that there was nothing that could be done with the fiery red centipede, the huge creature sank directly under the stream. As for the fiery red centipede, it seemed as if nothing had happened, and it actually stretched out its body. Then he put his lips and feet into the stream and slowly drank the clear water. What a wonderful world, Jia Yan exclaimed in surprise. But I'm not here just to see these scenery. Anyway, I'm not a human being. I can't get any benefits from exposing this place. My purpose is to explore the secrets here. Since the Siberian wild tiger's factory can obtain something here through that gap, extract the black liquid, and process it into a purple-red liquid, then I will look for this place of origin. There should also be gains. Jia Yan flew directly along this 5-kilometer radius. There are a lot of streams here, as well as those tall trees, and the huge monster that I can't recognize at all. They all seem to indicate that there is something really weird in this place. The animals and plants have become weirdly huge. Buzz buzz. Just when Jia Yan was thinking about something, a strange sound seemed to be the flapping of Jia Yan's wings. In this empty underground world, make a sound. Jia Yan saw the fiery red centipede resting by the stream not far away, as if he heard some terrifying sound. He directly drilled into the bush at an extremely fast speed. He disappeared in the blink of an eye. There seemed to be more huge bodies moving in the bushes. These creatures, which Jia Yan had not seen hiding before, now actually moved, and then hid their bodies further into the bushes, as if they were very scared. What? Jia Yan also became vigilant. His compound eyes looked vaguely at the direction of the sound 400 to 500 meters away. Buzz buzz. In the sight of his compound eyes, a black object that looked like dust was approaching quickly in the air. These things are getting closer, closer. When he was close to about 50 meters, Jia Yan could see the other party's whole picture clearly. It's actually a cockroach. But this head. The beetle belongs to the insect family Scopus, and has another name, called the slender-waisted wasp. It is a creature that looks like a bee. Generally, a small beetle is only about 1.5 centimeters in size. But the flying beetles in front of me were about 10 centimeters tall. Not much different from Jia Yan now. And the number was extremely large, nearly 100 giant cockroaches flying towards Jia Yan in the sky. Looking at these ferocious and huge numbers of creatures, Jia Yan's scalp almost went numb and he quickly spread his wings. Fly towards the original path. The sound of his wings spreading out was also a buzzing sound. However, it is slightly different from the army of cockroaches at the rear, and this difference means that even if Jia Yan undergoes 3 mutations, his flying speed is at most not much different from that of the army of cockroaches, or even vaguely faster. Get on the front line. But this difference in speed is not very obvious. Quick. I didn't expect there to be so many terrifying flying creatures here. Maybe I'm not afraid of 1 or 2. But when the number reaches so many, I have no choice but to run away. No wonder those huge creatures hid in a hurry. It turns out there are such a huge number. The cockroach appears. Jia Yan spread his wings and flew quickly. He estimated that the frequency of flapping his wings reached about 700 per second. The strong wing muscles are like a tireless machine, inciting crazily. The loud noise caused by this was extremely loud and spread far and wide in this empty underground world. But the sound of his flapping wings was completely covered up by the sound of the army of scorpions behind him. This is the sound of 100 fluttering wings similar to Jia Yan's. Buzz. Wherever the army of cockroaches passed by, no creature dared to appear. Jia Yan looked at the sharp tail needles of these genuine bees and suddenly felt that his copycat version of the tail needles was so weak. Even after the 3rd mutation, his tail needle still retains the right to open its mouth, which allows it to mate. However, precisely because of this reserved function, no matter how sharp the tail needle is, it cannot be compared with a real bee. Similar to tail needle. What's more, the army of cockroaches following him are not the tiny genuine cockroaches in the outside world, but an army of cockroaches that have undergone inexplicable evolution and reached a size of 10 centimeters. The tail needles on their tails, even if you don't have to try them, you know they are absolutely amazing. Jia Yan was flying in front, followed by a string of tails. It seemed that these armies of cockroaches were extremely dissatisfied with the army of cockroaches that had invaded their airspace. They all stared at Jia Yan and pursued him at extreme speeds, as if they had a deep hatred for each other. A whoosh sound. Jia Yan finally flew back to the cave from which he came out. But the army of cockroaches behind them still refused to give up, and followed Jia Yan's flight path directly into the cave. It was so quiet in the cave, except for those snow-white skeletons that had been dead for an unknown period of time, gradually weathering here, and finally blended into the soil. But this piece is destined to be broken today. First, Jia Yan, the source of the noise, descended here from a cracked passage in the cave. And now, the noisemaker actually led a large army of cockroaches and fled towards the quiet cave. Buzz buzz. Buzz buzz. There were completely different voices on both sides. Jia Yan almost used all his strength to bring the cockroaches closer and further apart. What? There is one so fast. Just when he was about to reach the crack, Jia Yan looked back. But he was horrified to notice that among the army of cockroaches there was a huge cockroach that was over 15 centimeters tall. After Jia Yan accelerated, he also picked up speed in an instant. In almost a few seconds, the distance was reduced by half. The two are about to come into contact. Get in. At this moment, Jia Yan suddenly changed direction and rushed upward. Above this part of the cave, there is an underground water flow, and after countless years of flowing, it has slowly created a cracked channel. It's the one coming down from Jia Yan. The huge cockroach didn't seem to react to Jia Yan's sudden turn. It rushed forward very far in a straight line in the air before stopping its body. The cold light of this giant frog's compound eyes reflected the brilliance of the luminous algae. At this time, the army of smaller frogs also came to his side. However, this giant frog did not stop with these army of insects. Find the bookstore. Instead, it turned and headed towards the gap passage where Jia Yan entered, flying directly in pursuit. As for the other members of the army of cockroaches, after hovering below for a while, they gave up the pursuit one by one and returned to the original road. How dare you chase one? Jia Yan flew in the passage at high speed. There were very few glowing algae in this passage, so his vision was very dim. He saw the army of dragonflies chasing below, and now only the biggest one was pursuing them. A ferocious look suddenly flashed in his compound eyes. I would be scared of an army of more than 100 giant cockroaches, but if you dare to chase one alone, do you really think that I, Jia Yan, is easy to bully? Although this giant cockroach is even bigger than Jia Yan. But Jia Yan is the strongest mosquito with 3 mutations in his tibia. If he can't defeat even one such giant mosquito, then all the mutations he had in the past were transformed into dogs. I'll just give you a try to see how powerful I am after mutating 3 times. Jia Yan thought so, and then suddenly came back from the ascending flight. Kill the giant cockroach that is chasing after you. To be continued. Please collect. Thanks to brother, I laughed and cried and forgot about it for once again refreshing the screen and tipping, thanks to book friends such as Have You Registered, Smiling Face Like a Pancake, Remembering the Southern Sky Together, Hepatitis B 9 Sons and other book friends. Bulletin, you will definitely stick to it, thanks. Reborn as an interstellar giant mosquito author, Bulletin you. Chapter 68. Thank you for your encouragement. I will work hard to update millions. Is not a problem, it is because of you that I am full of strength. Please collect again, bye. You must continue to struggle, dying, but not dead, please collect. Giant cockroaches fly extremely fast. Its body is larger than Jia Yan, but its wing structure is more aerodynamic, so when it flies, it is naturally faster than a mosquito. Jia Yan shortened the speed difference between him and the giant fly by speeding up the frequency of flapping his wings. The two were originally only a dozen meters apart. When the opponent hit him head-on, Jia Yan turned around and attacked unexpectedly. It was only 10 meters away. The moment when the two sides got close can be said to have happened in an instant. Buzz. 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 Crack. In a flash of lightning, a giant mosquito and a giant beetle, 2 giant flying insects, were about to cross each other in the air. Jia Yan's heart is calm. He knows that his greatest advantage is that his instant judgment is much better than that of a cricket. In this kind of staggered battle, he will definitely have the upper hand. Two pairs of huge compound eyes are almost close to each other in mid-air. Pass by. The moment only lasts a few tenths of a second. The needle in Jia Yan's mouth suddenly spit out from his mouth. In this short moment, the tail needle is naturally not faster than the mouth needle, let alone a precise attack. After the third mutation, the stylet has actually been greatly improved. Originally it was just as sharp and strong as a steel needle, but now it has definitely reached the level of a steel needle. Moreover, the length has increased, and Jia Yan can spit it out by about 3 centimeters from his mouth. Don't underestimate these 3 centimeters. At a very close distance, these 3 centimeters can be said to be a very powerful weapon. The sound fired by the stylet was very faint, and all I could see was a milky white dim ray shooting towards the giant cockroach. Crack! 2 giant flying insects clashed their wings in the air and crossed their bodies. The giant cockroach flew in mid-air, and its body trembled. But after a moment, it stabilized its posture again. It turns out that in such a rapidly approaching battle, it was a very difficult task to shoot the mouth needle at Jia Yan. In just a few tenths of a second, he couldn't grasp the timing well. In an instant, Jia Yan just pierced one of the wings of the giant beetle with the mouth needle. This kind of damage is not enough to kill this giant cockroach. This creature was worthy of being a cockroach. It was very aggressive and ferocious. After turning a corner in the air, it looked like a wounded beast and charged at Jia Yan again, who also turned around. The sharp tail needle on its tail was raised and aimed at Jia Yan, who was also attacking. The bee venom contained in the tail sting of a beetle is only a negligible amount on an ordinary beetle, and may only cause local swelling in humans. But for such a huge bee, its bee venom is not necessarily insignificant. Perhaps it has already transformed into something else during its long evolutionary path. Otherwise, why would those huge monsters in the underground world be so afraid of these insect armies? Jia Yan is still charging forward. The two clash in the air again. Just like ancient knights approaching quickly, it is full of majestic atmosphere of confrontation. While approaching rapidly, this time Jia Yan suddenly stretched out his long legs when the two sides were 10 centimeters apart. The long legs of Diptera insects have always been the slenderest among all insects. Compared with the giant worm, although the body trunk is 1 or 2 centimeters longer than Jia Yan, a large section of the foot is broken, only half of Jia Yan's foot. Not even there. After Jia Yan's body reached 13 centimeters, its feet became correspondingly longer, each one exceeding 20 centimeters. When stretched out, it was really extremely scary. Two powerful front legs stretched out and in an instant touched the tentacles of the giant beetle. Several other long-legged beasts also stepped forward one after another, all suppressing the giant beetle. Because they were in the middle of the rapid battle, the dragonfly had no place to rely on, and its feet could not reach Jia Yan's body. What was even more embarrassing was that his abdomen was arched, but even Jia Yan's long legs could not stab him. When I arrived, I was so anxious that my body was shaking wildly. Two giant insects quickly fell from the sky. Jia Yan's 6 long legs stepped forward one after another and controlled the giant beetle tightly. In terms of pure power, Jia Yan, who had undergone 3 mutations, could be said to be completely victorious. When the two of them fell rapidly in the air, they almost reached the end of the passage and almost fell into the cave again. If this battle drags on any longer, it might come to nothing, because Jia Yan is worried that the army of insects is still waiting in the cave below, so he has no choice but to quickly throw away the giant insects he caught and run away. After all, with such a huge number, Jia Yan would not want to try to see if his mutated clot shell, which has extremely powerful defense, can block all attacks. Because if you are not careful, you may die. Die. Looking at the compound eyes of the giant beetle so close at hand, the stylet in Jia Yan's mouthparts spurted out. The giant beetle also wanted to dodge, but its body was tightly entangled with its 6 long legs, and its abdomen could not attack any part. I can only watch helplessly as the giant mosquito in front of me shoots the sharp needles from its mouthparts towards my head. Poof! The stylet broke through the giant dragonfly's solid exoskeleton defense without any hindrance. Directly into the brain. Buzz! The giant cockroach suddenly struggled and flapped its wings. But this kind of struggle before death was still controlled by Jia Yan, who was surprisingly powerful. You know, although his body is only 13 centimeters now, his strength level is completely possible only for mosquitoes who are 30 to 50 centimeters tall. It's just that in order to enhance defense, the current body gave up the mutation of the body's huge size and instead focused on defense. Jia Yan was actually thinking that with his own defensive armor, if he let the tail needle of the giant army of beetles prick him, he might not be able to penetrate the defense. However, this kind of thing is too dangerous. Jia Yan will not take unnecessary risks. The mouth needle stirred violently in the giant cockroach's brain. The giant cockroach kept trembling. Jia Yan was already flapping his wings in mid-air. When the two were about to fall into the cave again, they started flying again, but this time it was Jia Yan who was holding each other and flying. Finally, the giant beetle struggling in his arms slowly stopped shaking. Died. Jia Yan was about to pull out the needle inserted into the brain of the dragonfly. Huh? This is it? He suddenly felt a taste from the needle site that he had never felt before. Originally, the mosquito's mouth needle was extremely sensitive. After 3 mutations, Jia Yan's mouth needle was even more sensitive than any mosquito on the planet. The smell is very strong. Jia Yan couldn't help but let his needle try to absorb a small mouthful. What? The certain liquid that was sucked into the body along the needle directly made Jia Yan feel as if all his hair follicles were stretched, and a feeling of extreme comfort and happiness emanated from his entire body. It can be said that it is very comfortable. Huh? My body seems to have changed a little bit more. This is the feeling of vitality and strength. When Jia Yan absorbed these liquids into his body reacted directly. His mouth needle was still inserted into the body of the giant beetle that had no vital signs. What on earth is this? Jia Yan was thinking. Something strange exists in this underground world, Jia Yan is sure of this. But after a little bit of sucking the juice from the giant cockroach's brain, he actually had a reaction similar to the black liquid, and it was not as uncomfortable as the black liquid made him feel. Although this may be because the number is too rare, at least from now on in terms of taste, it is definitely countless times better than the black liquid in the factory. And just this little bit made Jia Yan feel comfortable all over, and the previous fatigue was completely eliminated. This made Jia Yan a little moved. I'll wait another 10 minutes. If it's not harmful to the body, I'll try again. Jia Yan's compound eyes had a strange cold light. He looked at the 6 giant frogs hugged by their long legs, as if he had discovered an unknown treasure. Jia Yan flew to a raised stone platform in the passage and put the body of the cockroach aside. Jia Yan controlled his body and lay on the side of the stone, waiting for the next change in his body. 10 minutes later. Sure enough, this juice has something to do with the black liquid. And just a little bit, it made my body change a little, and the effect is even better than the black liquid. Jia Yan stood up from the stone. For 10 minutes, not only did he not feel anything strange. On the contrary, I can feel that after sucking a little bit of the juice from the cockroach's brain, my body has changed again. This change is not big, but Jia Yan only swallowed a little bit of the juice from the cockroach's brain. It seems that my chance here will fall on this giant moth. I just don't know if those giant centipedes and the like also have this kind of mysterious juice. But those giant creatures are still too powerful for Jia Yan now, such as the huge fiery red centipede. Jia Yan knows that there is nothing he can do against it. However, there is a huge army of cockroaches in the underground world. The group I saw alone had hundreds of them. As for the others I didn't see, I don't know how many there were. Jia Yan looked at the corpse of the dragonfly, with a sinister light in his eyes. His mouth parts poked out again. The corpse of the giant cockroach was very huge to Jia Yan, and there was no shortage of the mysterious juice in his brain. This juice is not brain juice, blood, or anything else, but a strange liquid that exists near the brain. One such giant cockroach has about the same amount of juice as a drop of eye drops in its brain. Although it's not a lot, it's not too little for Jia Yan. Suck up this drop of juice. Jia Yan felt shocked all over. Here we go. The juice is starting to take effect. Sure enough, this juice is related to the black liquid and the purple liquid. To be continued. Thanks to book friend Zoo2 who loves meat for the 588 tip. Thank you to book friends such as Have You Registered, Slight Taste, 878kh, Demon Formation, Sun Devouring Demon and other books. I would also like to thank all the book friends who gave me recommendation votes. You are the source of strength for me to maintain my motivation for updating. Thank you very much. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Reborn as an interstellar giant mosquito. Author, Bulletin U. Chapter 69. Please collect. Jia Yan lowered his body again. The juices sucked into the body began to exert the power of mutation. With such a little juice, it is naturally impossible for Jia Yan to achieve another major mutation. But it can improve his body little by little. Maybe the change that one giant beetle can provide is not huge, but what about 10, 20, or 100? Even kill all the giant cockroaches in the underground world to obtain the mysterious juice from their brains. So, to what extent should Jia Yan's body mutate? It is estimated that even if it does not reach the complete fourth mutation, it is not far behind. Jia Yan still lowered his body, lying on the raised rocks and slowly feeling the changes in his body. Compared with the previous mutation, this mild mysterious juice brought him a completely new feeling of change. If I had to use one word to describe it, it would be, shut-eye. He could feel energy slowly seeping into his body. The juice that is sucked into the digestive organs is integrated into the cells little by little, slowly spreads, and is evenly distributed to every corner of the body. After it is dispersed, there will not be much of this juice, so the affected place will be greatly reduced. But Jia Yan could still clearly feel that some strange changes were taking place in his body. The exoskeleton is condensing more secreted substances, increasing the rigidity of the exoskeleton. The internal organs of the body are slowly becoming healthier, and there has been some improvement in preventing vibrations. Of course, these changes are not big, just enough to make Jia Yan feel it a little bit. Soon the mutant power of the juice completely disappeared. Jia Yan stood up from the stone. In front of him was the huge corpse of a frog. If that's the case, I won't go out in a hurry. Jia Yan looked at the passage above, then slowly shook his head. Even if the northeast wild tiger seals the boiler at the top of the passage again, Jia Yan believes that there are so many cracks and caves here that there is always another way out. It's not that the creatures that want to come here can't go out, it's just that the living environment in the outside world is too different, so they will die quickly if they go out. Thinking of this, a thought like lightning flashed through Jia Yan's mind. Living environment. That's right. This is it. Jia Yan suddenly used the breathing holes on both sides of his abdomen to breathe. That's right. It's air. The air in this underground world is full of that weird substance. And the oxygen content is extremely high. The northeast wild tiger's factory boiler is connected to this space, and then extracts the air. After a complicated refining process, the black matter in the air is extracted, and finally those black liquids are formed. This must be the case. It turns out that the most bizarre feature of this place is also the biggest secret of the Northeast Wild Tiger Factory, which is the air in the underground world. Then these uniquely evolved creatures must be due to the influence of the air, and even the vegetation is the same. Jia Yan came to a conclusion and suddenly felt very good. He fluttered his wings. Perhaps the juice in the giant cockroach's brain is because after the air expanded and evolved, it retained some essence or special filtering substances in the body, and finally formed the juice in the brain. There must be some reasons why the air produces this mysterious substance. But I don't need to analyze it further, because after all, I am not a scientist who pursues the truth in everything. As for the next step, I have already thought about it, which is to hunt these giant beetles. Obtain the mysterious juice from their brains and launch my mutation plan again. Jia Yan flew up from the rocks. He no longer flew upwards, but quietly fell down into the cave. His hunting plan is about to begin. The target of hunting is those giant cockroaches. As for other animals, there might be similar substances in their bodies, but what Jia Yan saw were huge guys, and he didn't dare to move these animals for the time being. Buzz buzz. Giant mosquitoes take flight in the air. But compared to the first time he flew out of the cave, Jia Yan's flight this time was no longer full of worry, nor was it purposeless. His purpose is clear. That is the giant cockroach in this space, one that just wants to find a way to deal with them and suck out the mysterious juice from their brains. Wow! When passing by the clear stream outside the cave, a huge grass carp of tens of centimeters jumped up from the water again, but this time Jia Yan was well prepared. When it took off, he made a dodge in the air. This giant grass carp flew into the air and fell back into the water from the air. Not long after Jia Yan came out of the cave, he saw a scene that shocked him. The majestic fiery red centipede from before was actually struggling by the stream not far away. Around its head, there were hundreds of giant moths flying and attacking. These cockroaches were obviously the same group that had been chasing Jia Yan before. The number of more than 100 bees is too huge. When the number of bees becomes huge, even small bees like the outside world can kill people. Not to mention the giant cockroach here. But Jia Yan really couldn't believe that the flaming red centipede before, which was 2.5 meters tall, could be chased so embarrassingly by this group of giant centipedes. You must know that the fiery red centipede has an exoskeleton defense that even water monsters cannot break. Facing this army of centipedes that even the flaming red centipedes panicked to avoid, Jia Yan naturally did not dare to be careless and hurriedly got into a bush outside the cave as soon as his head emerged. It is said to be a bush, but it is actually a kind of grass. Jia Yan has seen these grasses many times in the outside world, but he can't name them. They were supposed to be short, but at this time they were extremely tall and lush, hiding Jia Yan's body very well. Buzz buzz. The army of centipedes didn't know that the general in their army was dead, and they just attacked the flaming red centipedes. Perhaps the fiery red centipede had not completely hidden its figure before, but in any case, it was noticed by the giant centipedes and launched an attack. Jia Yan watched for a moment and finally understood why this fiery red centipede was so afraid of the army of centipedes. It turns out that this group of centipedes seems to be a little smart. When attacking, they don't even attack the centipede's thick exoskeleton. Instead, like bombers, they sprint down from above and penetrate into the gaps where the fiery red centipede's exoskeletons are connected. It cannot be said that these places are completely defenseless, but compared to the thick exoskeleton armor in other places, this place seems a bit weak. The sharp tail needle of a dragonfly can easily penetrate it. The army of cockroaches launched a series of attacks. Buzz. The successive attacks are like bombers taking turns bombing. It just wants the sound to be there, and the special effects to be there. It's like an action movie about monster battles. It's so good. You can't use as if, it's just monsters fighting. Jia Yan felt that he might be considered one of these monsters now. A supergiant mosquito with a body length of 13 centimeters, including 15 centimeters of tail needle, with 6 legs fully extended and covering an area of more than 40 centimeters, couldn't it be considered a monster? What's more, Jia Yan's third mutation should have grown more exaggeratedly, but because of the chain reaction caused by the explosion, his biological instinct chose the direction of defense. Otherwise, even the birds would not be able to find such a huge creature at a height of 30 to 50 centimeters. Now Jia Yan doesn't even know how strong his defense is. Can he block bullets? It probably still can't be done. Jia Yan can be sure of this. But Jia Yan felt that he could block ordinary human attacks, even if they were hit with sticks. The huge improvement in defense makes mosquitoes, who have always felt weak, suddenly feel a sense of security. Even if you give up your body's hugeness and stronger strength for these defenses, it's still worth it? After lurking in the bushes for a long time, Jia Yan saw that the battle over there had reached its climax. Under the continuous attack of the centipede army, the fiery red centipede finally became furious. It stretched out its lips and feet, stopped dodging, and jumped directly into the air to bite. A giant centipede that had no time to dodge was directly caught by the labialis. Within a moment, it was chewed into pieces by the mandibles of the flaming red centipede. Now the army of cockroaches is even more crazy. If one member dies, let them continue to attack desperately. 20 or 30 giant centipedes stopped taking off and landed directly on the body of the fiery red centipede. They pierced the tail needles in the gaps in the exoskeleton. After the tail needles with poison glands penetrated the centipede's body, they quickly released all the venom. The characteristic of bee venom is that it is destructive to the nerve center, lowers blood pressure, causes central nervous system paralysis, difficulty breathing, and severe direct death. The toxicity in the bodies of these giant centipedes is definitely not that simple. The fiery red centipedes in the battlefield were constantly rolling on the ground. During this period, more than a dozen giant centipedes died directly. The fiery red centipede struggled extremely fiercely. Its 2-meter-long trunk was like a huge tree trunk. The body was tumbling by the stream, causing dust to rise and obstructing the line of sight. But this churning did not last long. After the army of cockroaches paid the price of at least 30 members. The huge fiery red centipede finally stopped struggling. Its range of motion becomes smaller. Find bookstore M. More giant beetles pounced on its body. At this time, the fiery red centipede's body finally stopped moving at all. It's amazing, it can even kill such a huge fiery red centipede. Jia Yan was in the bushes and grass, and his breathing was so frightened that he almost stopped. It can kill a giant centipede, but it can never kill a fiery red centipede. After all, the opponent is more than 2 meters tall, and Jia Yan's body is not toxic. There is obviously no way to kill such a giant centipede. This may be called one thing reducing another thing. What a great show! There was a sly smile in Jia Yanfu's eyes. You have been fighting for so long, maybe the spoils of war will belong to me. Sure enough, just after the giant beetle army won the victory. Several giant centipedes first flew into the air, and then all the giant centipedes left the huge body of the fiery red centipede. Although centipedes can also eat meat, they cannot dismember such a huge fiery red centipede carcass. After circling for a long time, these giant beetles formed a formation again and flew away into the distance. It's now. Jia Yan suddenly flew out from the bushes. To be continued. Thanks to hepatitis B. Juyang, have you registered yet? Just read the book without bubbling. Thank you for the tips from several book friends. Reborn as an interstellar giant mosquito author, Bulletin U. Chapter 70. In the dark underground world, a huge mosquito over 13 centimeters spreads its wings and flies quickly. At the end of the line of sight, an army of cockroaches, like an army, was swimming in front of them. The corpses of the enemies killed by this group of cockroaches, as well as dozens of his comrades, were dumped by the stream. Jia Yan's heart soared with joy. But be careful of being discovered by that army of cockroaches. First, he fell under the carcass of a midge. He looked at the corpse of the huge fiery red centipede not far away, and the light flashed in his compound eyes. This huge fiery red centipede is unwilling to try to see if there is any juice. But if it sucks the juice of so many centipedes first, the digestion time will definitely take up a lot of time, and other creatures will probably come to snatch it. Jia Yan thought for a moment and had a plan in mind. He stretched out his 6 legs and held the corpse of the giant dragonfly next to him between his feet. With such huge strength, he seemed to be able to carry the corpse directly and fly to the cave not far away from which he came out without any effort at all. There are no living creatures in that cave, so it seems to be a good hiding place. When passing by the stream, a grass carp of several dozen centimeters jumped up, startling Jia Yan. "This kid, can't you take a break?" Jia Yan looked at the giant 50-centimeter grass carp with a dumbfounded look. Regardless of it, Jia Yan made a dodge movement in the air and placed the body of the cockroach in the cave, in a hidden corner of the pile of rubble. "Keep flying out." Then he carried the body of a giant crocodile to and from the cave. And the 50-centimeter grass carp also jumped up to greet him when he passed by the stream. Jia Yan ignored it at all. "But it always makes me feel uncomfortable when it's so scary, right?" Finally, Jia Yan placed the corpse of the dragonfly from the cave and flew out again. "Wow!" The grass carp jumped up from the stream, opened its big mouth, and was about to bite Jia Yan flying in the air. "If I don't teach you a lesson, you won't learn how to behave." Jia Yan puffed up his abdomen in annoyance. This time, he did not dodge too far, but watched the grass carp jump with compound eyes. When the opponent reached the highest point, his figure paused in the air for a moment, and was about to fall. "Get out of here." Jia Yan flew forward, raised his abdominal tail needle, and pierced the left side of the grass carp's body. After pricking, Jia Yan quickly pulled out the tail needle and escaped to one side without waiting for the opponent to struggle. Bah! The grass carp twisted its body in pain in the air, and the 2-centimeter long tail needle was fiercely inserted into its body. For a grass carp that was more than 50 centimeters long, it was not a big wound. The opponent fell into the stream. Jia Yan saw the guy sinking immediately. He probably wouldn't dare to attack him again for a while. "You're stupid." Jia Yan shook his head speechlessly, and then continued his moving plan. As expected, the grass carp didn't come out now, and of course Jia Yan wouldn't be careless, but in short, his transport speed immediately increased a lot. After counting, there were 36 corpses of giant cockroaches. After Jia Yan moved them one by one back to the pile of rubble in the cave, he still felt a little tired despite his strong body. Next, Jia Yan looked at the huge fiery red centipede lying alone and silent by the stream, and the light flashed in his eyes. If this centipede also has that mysterious juice in its brain, how much is it? Maybe the 30 dozen here together wouldn't even have a quarter of the flaming red centipede. Jia Yan couldn't wait and flew out of the cave again. When he came to the stream, he first looked at the clear water warily. He has not forgotten that when the flaming red centipede was by the water, there was a huge creature that was even larger than the flaming red centipede and attacked the flaming red centipede. If this guy was here, he would definitely appear to snatch the body. Fortunately, the stream is crystal clear, more than 3 meters wide, and probably more than 2 meters deep. Under the reflection of the luminous algae, although many fish over 20 or 30 centimeters in size could be seen swimming, the body of that huge creature was not seen. Look at the front of the stream. There is a small lake there, about 100 meters wide. That behemoth must have gone there. Anyway, hurry up. Jia Yan fell on the fiery red centipede's body. He first looked at the centipede's hard exoskeleton. This exoskeleton was definitely harder than Jia Yan's current exoskeleton. It is no exaggeration to say that Jia Yan even doubted that ordinary small pistols could not shoot through this exoskeleton. No wonder the tail stingers of those giant centipedes couldn't pierce its exoskeleton. Even the huge monster's attack seemed helpless against the fire-red centipede. However, the fiery red centipede with such a strong defense still died. Death under the siege of the centipede army actually felt a bit heroic and tragic. Survival of the fittest in nature, I have to work hard, otherwise I might one day die tragically like this centipede. Jia Yan collected his emotions and went to the centipede's head. This fiery red centipede has a total body length of 2.5 meters, and its brain is also extremely large. Even when Jia Yan is crawling on his head, it looks spacious. Jia Yan is looking for the exoskeleton connection point in the brain of the fiery red centipede. The defense here is still very tight, and the gaps are basically connected. Jia Yan felt a bit tricky. Should we just give up exploring the brain of the fiery red centipede? Absolutely not. You must know that if it succeeds, and the mysterious juice does exist in the brain of this fiery red centipede, then the amount it provides alone may exceed the amount that the hundreds of giant centipedes in the army of centipedes can provide. It is even possible that this fiery red centipede alone can allow Jia Yan to accumulate juice to the point where the amount of juice can change. It is still unknown whether he can undergo the fourth mutation, but it will definitely make his body grow bigger, leap one step further. At this time, Jia Yan actually has blurred boundaries about his own mutation. It was said to be 3 mutations before, but can it actually be regarded as 3 mutations, or should the first and second mutations be merged together? After all, thinking about it now, it seems that the first mutation was not as big as the next 2. But now, because of the existence of the brain juice of these giant creatures, Jia Yan can predict that his mutation path will not change suddenly like before, but will grow a little bit at a time. So how to define mutation or not? It's a bit troublesome. The first mutation can be regarded as the first step in my growth, so let's count it as once, so now there are still 3 mutations. When I feel that I have greatly enhanced next time, it will be regarded as the 4th time. Jia Yan defined his own mutation. After struggling with the brain of the fiery red centipede for a long time, Jia Yan finally found an easy place to strike. That's the centipede's oral cavity. Jia Yan flew to the flaming red centipede's claws. This pair of claws is ferocious and powerful. Normally, the flaming red centipede must have killed countless creatures with these claws and put them into its mouth. A little further forward from the jaws and feet is its mouth parts, which are made of a complex layered structure. However, the fiery red centipede was already dead at this time, and its mouthparts were in a powerless state. Jia Yan looked at the ferocious and huge pair of jaws, and first he calmed down. Bless, this guy is really dead, he thought silently in his heart. If it is just paralysis or suspended animation, then he will deliver it to the other party's mouth. There is no reason not to eat the food delivered. Jia Yan jumped into the claws of the fiery red centipede. The opponent's huge mouthparts were right in front of his compound eyes. Try it now. Jia Yan finally endured his fear and gently inserted his slender mouthparts into the gap between the centipede's weak mouthparts. The fear is almost overwhelming. If this huge fiery red centipede wakes up and moves its mouthparts even a little, the first thing that will be unlucky will be its mouthparts. And even if Jia Yan can escape alive, he will definitely not live long. After all, if the organs for eating are gone, how can we still live? Please don't move. Jia Yan tried his best to insert his mouthpart into the opponent's mouthpart. Fortunately, this centipede really didn't move. It seems really completely dead. After working hard for a long time, Jia Yan finally felt that his mouthparts squeezed the hard mouthparts of the red centipede one by one, and then reached a softer place. Finally entered the other person's mouth. Okay. Prick out the mouth needle and see if it can reach the brain. Jia Yan suddenly thrust out the sharpest organ in his body, the needle hidden in his mouth part. It's almost like a nightmare. At this moment, Jia Yan seemed to feel the huge centipede body in front of him move slightly. At this moment, Jia Yan almost lost his mind. This fiery red centipede is not completely dead yet. You can't retreat, you can't retreat. If you retreat now, all your previous efforts will be wasted. The needle. Use the fastest and most violent speed to stab it into its brain. Disorganize its brain and kill it completely. Jia Yan almost used all his strength. The needle stretched out crazily through the soft oral organ of the fiery red centipede, and then thrust upward. Jia Yan could feel that the body of the fiery red centipede was really moving. Quick! Quick! Jia Yan is extremely anxious. His body was almost completely inserted into the mouth of the fiery red centipede. With all his strength, even the mouthparts were inserted into the fiery red centipede's oral organs. To be continued. I laughed and cried and forgot, brother. I don't know how to express my current emotions in words. You went to other book reviews to advertise this book, and then you were banned after my appeal failed last night. I donated all the Kidian coins in my account to this book. It's more than 5,000 starting coins. This is all because bulletin you is not good. Complaining in the chapter makes you anxious. Brother, now the eldest brother just says, come back. Even if you register a small account and leave messages frequently, it will be fine. From now on, please don't help me post advertisements in other books. This book is enough to benefit you brothers and sisters. Thanks to book friend and Jing for the 588 tip, grateful, just read the book without bubbling. Traveler in the Starry Sky 878 KH. Have you registered rewards from book friends such as Tota King Li Jing and Mengying Luoluo?